Good morning and welcome to this July 19th, the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. We'd like to welcome everyone here and Secretary to we have a to the regulations pertaining to this meeting.
Yes, so we have one body presidency here in New York State Conference, Mr. Carney. I think that is now services, and also Vice Chair for the forum, I should say, pursuant to the state's law, as well as opportunity for the officers. As is the Carney Syracuse.
Thank you. All right, are we ready to approve the minutes of the June 20th meeting of the minutes? So, James, Edwards, are there any revisions? Amendments?
Yeah, there's one provision for Anderson point gap at page 4, public session minutes, first sentence. Brought up a semicolon, so the executive director Berlin further explained that. One thing we're not required by FOIL to do is to put a records don't exist, including records. It was data that would support the request will provide access to data, subject to relevancy, exclusions, privileges, and so on. And that existed before. That's transcribed.
I think the vice chair is Austin, and you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Other than my abstaining because I wasn't present at the meeting, I noticed a typo on the top of page 3. It should be Executive Director Berland, not Sanford.
Excellent noted. Are there any objections to any of these proposed revisions? Are there any additional ones?
I just want to have the record reflect that I'm abstaining.
Are we ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes. All those opposed? Any opposed? We have 2 abstentions. Commissioners Cardozo and Rowan-Wagner.
And Austin.
Oh, okay, and Austin.
If I could just, the audio is not great from New York City, particularly where Executive Director Berland is, and I wonder if Chair Davey and Executive Director Berland, if you just shift a little bit to your left, so you're both kind of closer to the mic that hangs over the table, that may resolve it. We do have folks on the line trying to address the issue, but I just wanted to make you all aware.
Actually, there is no mic right over us. Is that a mic? I think the mics are right there. There are no mics to.
I raised the volume a little bit. Do you notice a difference?
Little bit. Can you hear that?
What was that? Perhaps if you just try to speak up as we go forward, it'll help resolve the issue. We're still working on it, but we just wanted to see if shifting might help.
Actually, I think shifting, we shift closer to the video monitors, then we'll get closer to the mics and the ceilings. The mics and the ceilings are a couple of these little square. Did you hear? Were you able to hear that?
Bits and pieces. We'll continue trying to resolve it.
Right.
No, I think we just moved down. At a break.
Okay. So now we will go to the operations update.
Thank you. That's under tab B in the agenda book, the open session. Note again, as we have been doing since the beginning of this year, in addition to this comparison to status activity in each category, for the prior year for prior commission, and year to date for this commission, we have last month, first column. We may move that around a little bit in the next report, but that's how it's positioned now. I do want to say that activity overall has continued to increase this year, notably the number of complaints and referrals we've received so far this year are essentially comparable to the corresponding period, J2. In other areas, the figures reflect both the central normal cyclical patterns as well as new patterns that are emerging. For example, I'm getting an echo. In lobbying, we have the beginning of a biennial cycle, so there's an uptick in activity, as well also the regulations to catch up over the 2-year period that started at the beginning of this year. In addition, because of the inception of the expanded ethics training, not just for lobbyists, but also for lobbying clients, there's more inquiries that's beginning to quiet down as the training by lobbyists and lobbying. And the staffing plan filled out the experience. We will talk about a little bit more in a moment. Ethics training on page 5 of the report. You'll see the numbers for officers and employees receive credit for ethics training. Those reflect the numbers of individuals who were trained in courses conducted by this commission. It doesn't reflect the numbers trainings that are being agencies, nearly 400 agency ethics audits. If we had those numbers in there with the quarterly report, we'll have another report coming out shortly. For the month of May, approximately 12 states were training. In June, the Charlie Park, 6,000 more. If you put those figures to the figures we have referred of training in Block 8, 22. Yeah, some more individuals we have to for the state. And I want to say that
Commissioner, we asked you Mike Spinell.
What, you're cutting out on me a little bit?
But could you mute your mic, Spinell?
Okay, I will. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes. We're just getting a lot of feedback from you. Could you mute your mic, Spinell? All right, thank you.
we go. Again, I want to say this is a huge achievement, both by our training staff, which are responsible not only for conducting trainings and designing trainings, but also for training trainers at the agency. They've done a remarkable job, as have the agency ethics officers and their staffs in bringing about that level of training. So from my perspective, it's very, very impressive. Again, do want to thank staff for all the work they've done throughout the transition as we come to the end of the first full year of operating this commission.
Indeed.
With respect to, any questions?
So let's hold on 1 minute. Go ahead.
So I wanted to ask you a question on the audit and review on page 6. It seems that we're significantly behind last year, and I wonder if there's an explanation. Request for additional information, and then number of targeted FPS reviews completed. It's an obvious drop, and I just wonder if there's an explanation for that.
I think it's cyclical, but Michael, can you provide more texture on that?
Well, I believe that they're working now on a list of random audits. They got a list of a random list of 1,000 filers, and they're working on that 1,000 filer list of randoms.
I just think conducting them is important, obviously, as an overall deterrent for people who are not doing it. And just the numbers struck me because there was so much fewer than last year.
Yeah, it's something that is partly cyclical in nature. We lost essentially a quarter of activity from the period beginning of the inception of the commission until the appointment on an interim basis of me as its executive director, my ability to designate staff. We weren't able to commence formal audits. So that's part of the impact. You'll also see that a lot of attention was focused on targeted FDS reviews. So that figure for this agency, 335 year to date, is well ahead of the 67 that JCO had completed. And it's the same staff that's conducting those targeted reviews and the audits, as well as the random reviews that are conducted. And as Michael pointed out, they're doing a draw about the filings that they're going to be in the coming months. So we're going to catch up.
We'll pay attention to that, see what the next meeting shows. Before we go to the next item, which is staffing and recruiting update, Emily's asked that we hold off. Somebody's going to close this behind us.
Yeah.
And hope that it'll help our.
I think something here.
Over there.
But maybe just in case. I don't know.
Sure.
What time did the accident? Okay.
What, man?
Right here, hold on, I did something, somebody did something. There you go. Okay, maybe, wait. No, that's the. All right, now I'm gonna extend it.
Sorry. Good doing it, won't you? You're too people to try to do that. Yeah. Fire.
And it's in our schools. Yes. Ridiculous cost. Double.
All right, so we hope this will help with the volume, the clarity coming from here, but we'll see. All right, the next item on the.
Question, sorry. I'd like to know what are some of the topics under miscellaneous?
What page?
Page 2, I'm sorry, page 2.
For example, someone might call and ask questions about the process of seeking approval for an outside activity. Rather than actually seeking approval, they'll ask about the process for seeking approval. We would consider that miscellaneous.
Okay.
And that goes for the other topics as well. Someone might call and ask for the process of how to obtain an opinion.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions on the operations update? All right, staffing and recruiting update?
Yes, we're doing well. Not as well as we were hoping, but we're very well. In the training unit, we have one fully approved hire, training associate trainer. We're hoping starting very shortly, so that's going to take place. We have a second accepted offer that now has to go through the DDA approval process. Hopefully that will not be too protracted. And we have a third training position, and we expect that position to be filled as soon as necessary paperwork. Some DDA process. So we should fill out the 3 training social positions that we had outlined for the owner staffing. One thing that's under consideration is rather than having 3 trainers and 3 assistants, perhaps have 4 trainers and 2 assistants. That's partly going to depend on what's available to us in the marketplace, what responses we have, and also how our training needs evolve. But we're well on our way there. It's a slow process, frankly, filling the training assistant positions. It's partly a question of how competitive we are on pay grade, but we're working.
Do we have a standard training process for new hires that they go through, or does it depend on?
It depends on the group they're coming into. Everyone goes through a training process specific to their particular responsibilities as they're brought on board. And there is a standardized orientation process as well for moving forward with interviews for the 2 investigators. So I have that correctly?
Yeah.
Right. And then in the administration group, Mariana has identified candidate she's quite excited about. She's going to be going on to second interviews. Steering increase to cover existing personnel costs. But we're looking forward to having that problem. Once we get to that point. Any questions?
All right. So where are we? Commissioner Perdines?
Just one moment. I believe the live stream has lost audio. And we're back.
So we're on per diems.
Review payments. Again, as I said, there have been no further per diem payments since the last announcement. However, a series of payments are in process for amounts attributable to potential commission meetings, committee meetings, and additional time, preparation time submitted by commissioners. Totals that are in process. So these are not the final 8 numbers at this point. Our expectation, Marianne, is August 2nd
Yes.
will be the day for payment of these, once they go through the approval process. So my commissioner, Chair Davy, the total is $3,834.30. For Vice Chair Austin, total is $2,811.82. For Commissioner Ayers, $4,377.49. For Commissioner Caravaggio, $2,291.11. For Commissioner Cardozo, $7,828.36. For Commissioner Carney, $3,418.92. For Commissioner Edwards, $7,796.41. For Commissioner Grunwagen, $2,108.87. Commissioner James, $3,355.01. And for Commissioner Whittingham, $3,482.82. That's a total of $42,305.11. Combined with previously announced amounts, we're within the amount we have budgeted. Right. Or on an annual basis, well within the amount we budgeted on an annual basis.
And it should, sure, and it should be understood, a couple of things. One is not all commissioners submit for reimbursement of time spent, and that some of us are behind in submitting for payment for time spent on commission activity. And I know a couple of us plan to get caught up hopefully by the next time we report out. Commissioner Edwards, I don't know why.
I haven't seen you in a whole
I
time.
know.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood what you just outlined represents for the months of April through August.
Yeah, April through June. Through June. Payments will be made, assuming approvals come through on time.
Any other questions on this item? All right, so can we move to committee updates? And we'll start with the Education Committee, Commissioner Edwards.
Okay. Thank you. So in tab, under tab B, you'll find recommendations coming out of our committee for a proposed charter and objectives for a 3-year period. This was requested, I guess, at our organizing meeting and amended last month when you asked us to create an action plan. The meeting met, the committee met twice, one in person and one through email discussions, and worked very closely with the staff. Thank you for the staff for all the hard work put in this to come up with what we see as our role as the Education Committee. And we'd like to put forth a recommendation that it be accepted by the commission once we look at all the committee structures that we had discussed. It lays out our proposed objectives, the goals we have for the committee, and the outcomes over a 3-year period for the education division. I want to point out that the objectives reflect the presentation that was made at the previous meeting and your regard to the strategy staff proposed to fulfill its objectives. Are there any questions?
I'll just, Commissioner James.
You have a question in terms of terminology. What is black box?
What is what?
flat style, flat file.
It's just essentially a spreadsheet. It refers to, rather than a relational database.
And I noticed that Commissioner Edwards had asked that we have targeted goals for training reflected in our efforts to the milestones, and I see there's some effort to address that here.
And I would add, we're working on specific milestones, progressive milestones, in achieving those goals. But the average is certainly in the live training side. The average is approaching 12,000 a month, would actually conform to the 150,000, more or less. Just a slight uptick in that. We'll take care of that. And the online training module is going to be rolled out by the end of September. That's action progressively with that. So to develop incremental amounts again for that, but the average is going to have to run about that level to achieve the 50,000 a year.
Any other commissioner? Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I just have two questions. One small, one more big picture. On the objectives, years 1 to 3, the first item is rebrand the unit to be consistent with new and expanded requirements. I was just curious about what rebrand the unit means. That sounds like finding a new name for it.
One was we had the logo. I think we've done all of that.
Right.
We had the logo. We talked about making some of the working on the website. We can do more.
So like public facing sort of, yeah, that makes sense.
More public facing and also more accessible to the state workforce as well, because we offering guidance on training obligations as well as access to the online components and then scheduling for the live training. So all of that will be worked out as the new system is developed. The other part of the major part of the project.
We're working with communications to make sure that takes effect.
Great. Thank you. So the second thing is just more big picture. I think this is extremely well done. I love the way you put together the charter and the objectives and the plan. I think it's fantastic. And I think for the other committees that haven't yet done one of these, I think this is likely to be a really good thing to crib from in terms of the general language. And so I guess I just was curious if there's particularly any thoughts from Sandy or other members of the staff about the language. There's nothing behind this question. It's just that I'm thinking that the two committees I'm on that don't have these should group from it. So I wanted to hear, the language about the committee is established to provide oversight to the unit to ensure the executive director has the appropriate level of guidance, resources, and policy directives necessary to successfully execute the legislative requirements. And then there's language about ensuring that the unit's programs are designed and executed in a way that earns the trust and respect. I'm just interested in any thoughts the staff might have on that language in terms of what it implies for the role of the commission as a whole, because we have this, the last meeting, I believe we decided the delegation committee is going to be looking at that generally. And so is this, in staff's view, is this a good encapsulation of the way committees should be relating to the staff? I mean, I assume so because it's in front of us, but I'm just looking for any other thoughts that the folks might have on that issue.
It's an exceptionally good statement for the education committee, certainly where resources in particular need to be directed to the group and to that effort. As well as support as this plays out. It's not an easy thing to gain the trust, not only of the public, which is in and of itself a major thing to achieve, but also the confidence and trust of the workforce and the ethics officers who support them, working together with us to achieve this objective. It's quite substantial, and it's not a one-off thing. It's annual training. It's analysis of people who need to cooperate, take all the start, hopefully, accept the training as a very positive thing. You know, we need to be in a position, have enough of a rapport with the workforce and agency ethics officers that we can get feedback from them. You know, what's working, what isn't. We've got some commentary from the public hearing, and that's reflected in the next item. But as this plays out, this new kind of universal training program, we're going to need to have a lot of cooperation and an interactive relationship across the workforce. It's kind of my way of saying this is a very special sort of undertaking that we're being conducted, and it's hopefully it will give the public assurance. It's not per se, I think from our perspective, directed at the public, it's directed at the state workforce.
And to Commissioner Edwards and then Commissioner Whittingham.
I would add to that is I think that the framework is not necessarily just simply unique to the Education Department division. Because I did think our earlier discussions as a new body, we all were not on and continue not to be on the same plate with regard to our relationship with the staff and how we interact with one another. And I was trying to be cautious about making sure that we not replicate what the staff is doing, replace what the staff is doing, and micromanage to the point of nausea.
Right.
But we also wanted to make sure that we took our responsibility seriously with regard to providing the direction the agency would need if it wants to represent consensus of the commission. And I think that as we move forward with this committee structure, we be mindful of that, and that, you know, and constantly search for what our real role is, not to compete, but to move forward with the help of the agenda. So I think that it took a lot of work chiseling and making sure that we were on the same page as staff. All work hard to get there, and we did a lot of that. I mean, it was painful. But I think at the end, it worked out. Would you not agree?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Commissioner Whittingham.
Thank you. Chair, are you requesting that we vote on this today?
We're not, we're passing it on, not voting.
Not voting.
Like,
Okay. No, that's fine. I have some comments. There are a few. So if we're not voting today, we don't have to go through them. Nothing quite substantial in some respects. For example, where we have our proposed charter and the last sentence, where there is second to last line, and we talk about enforcing compliance with the New York State ethics and conflict of interest laws.
where are you?
We are on the first page.
Here.
It's above the paragraph about goals for the committee.
Okay.
Right. And the second to last sentence. We talk about, you know, enforcing compliance with New York State ethics and conflicts of interest laws. And what I wanted to find out is if we want to limit it to conflict of interest laws, or do we want to say New York State ethics, lobbying, and public officers law? Because the conflict of interest is incorporated in the ethics rules, and then we have not mentioned the lobbying or the other. So just to suggest that, then under goals for the committee, we have in that first paragraph the before this includes, where it says it's agreed upon goals. So sentence, the goals of the education are to work with the executive director and or designated staff.
Yes.
To ensure. And then we come in the commission are executed in a manner to achieve its agreed upon goals. Just had some comments or thoughts that I'd like to be considered. So to achieve perhaps the statute's mandate, ECRA's mandate, so that would be one of the things we want to be our goal, to achieve that mandate, to increase employees' awareness of their ethical obligations. Perhaps another goal could be to decrease ethical complaints or violations and promote public confidence in government or state employees.
So can you?
Yeah, I definitely will. There are a few, but I will, if we're not voting, there are a few suggestions that I will send to you, and then we can circulate it to everyone and then vote on it. That's okay. Thank you.
Now, but before I was talking with Sandy with regard to how to move forward. And I guess I need some guidance from the chair with regard to next steps. I'm talking with Sandy. We don't necessarily want this approved today. I would think we want to take this along, take our version along with every other chair's, every other committee's version of their charter to make sure they don't overlap and then agree on or vote on all of them as a body, as one body. And if that's indeed the case, then this is a work in progress that we can fine tune and present.
Well, that's a proposal. One of the things that we had said at the last meeting that is in the minutes is that we would try to find a date in September where that's just dedicated to looking at committees and these types of things. So I was going to bring that up on the new business, find that date. So yeah, so we could hold off and then we'll use that meeting to come up with a process by which we then charters and anything else that people think we need to sign off on.
Okay, so this is like a report in progress in terms of what we've accomplished. We'll continuing adding them to make the changes until we are on the agenda to discuss charters and all committees. You send me that material, I'll make those changes. Thank you.
Do you have any comments on your second document under attachment E?
Yes. Under attachment E, you'll see a list, I believe, of 6 questions that was assigned to the Education Committee. Those questions come from the public hearing that we held in March. We met to discuss, we met again twice. We've had many conversations with staff, many reiterations of this document with staff. And again, we thank the staff for their patience and guidance pulling this together. And we came up, we asked them to come up with pros and cons and then their recommendations. That is what's before you now. And we don't want any action on this. We just want to give you a sense of where we are in the process. As at your request, the last meeting to collaborate with those committees who may be overlapping. We reached out to the ethics committee chair, the lobbying committee chair, and the communications committee chair, and they all concur with what we're proceeding with this. Are there any questions?
This is fantastic. This document is extremely helpful. I would just renew my request that all documents that come to the commission have a who they're from, who they're to, and the date. I thought this was from staff. And it's great that, obviously staff worked on it too, and that's fantastic, but it's just really helpful to know the to, from, and the date.
I'm sorry, I can't.
No, thank you.
And we're really trying to, just know that it's not happening, at least in the way I'd like to see it happen, but I would like that when committee prepares materials for its members in anticipation of a meeting, that copies of what we submit be circulated to the entire commission. That commission be invited to attend, and I'm not being critical, it's just of all that needs to get done.
We did that already.
I was just going to point out that there was a motion to that effect that was passed. So I think that the commission is already committed to that course of conduct and is expected to be doing that.
And has that not been happening? I think it pretty much has.
I don't think that has. But again, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've been on the phone trying to get this right. And this is over and above what staff is doing, you know, to keep up with their objectives. So it's a process. I'm patient and allow it to fit into the whole scheme of things. But we need to work on that a little bit more, and we're committed to doing that.
Commissioner Cardozo, that we have an issue.
I just wanted to plead guilty. But I'll go into those details.
Okay, sure. All right, are we okay?
I'm done.
All right. Anything then from ethics, legal, or lobbying? If not, we can go, I'm sorry, communications, that's the note. Sorry.
Yes, we had a very, very lengthy meeting, and it highlights an issue that Claudia just reviewed, is that it seemed that in the last few weeks before our meeting, a bunch of issues arose that we had to focus on that we hadn't quite anticipated. So I think it just highlights that while the charter, I think, is a very good idea, we have to recognize that some things are going to change over time, particularly in year one. So I want to, and I also, as I give this report, we did not circulate all the relevant documents, and I apologize for that. But I wanted to highlight the four issues that we did discuss, because ultimately they will be coming up for you. The first issue was that Emily DeSantis, our communications director, had drafted the first draft of the annual report. I think it was over 100 pages. And she had circulated it to the committee for their comments. Very, very, very impressive document. And the committee spent over an hour, I think, discussing the various items, giving her our suggestions, some in writing, some generally. And she is in the process now of in effect, redrafting it to reflect the developments and our suggestions. And our thought was that, and she's very, very busy right now on a couple of other things, but as soon as she has a chance, she will finish that. She will circulate a red line in effect to us, and then the proposed final 125 or so page document. I guess it's longer than that when you get the various appendices. The committee would review and would circulate to everyone, because ultimately it will go before the commission. Not clear yet whether we should formally approve it or not, but obviously we can't nitpick 150 pages from 11 people. But so that is a major item. The second thing we discussed was the FOIL regulation that is now, I guess, is the one of the items, and I guess it's
Next on the
one of the attachments that we'll get to in a minute. And one of the things we had not appreciated, and staff was present, was that in deciding on the FOIL regulations, we have to be cognizant not only of our overall desire to put as much as possible on our website and keep the public advised, is the burden on the staff. I use burden in terms of how much does it cost, what is the staff time, and particularly given the additional responsibilities imposed on the staff by the code statute, we have to understand, make an evaluation of the costs involved of adding things to the website, making it easier to get things from FOIL, and staff is working with us to come up with that. And that's why when we get to the FOIL reg, you'll see that there's a reference to the fact that we will be maybe adding things to the website as the year goes on, depending upon our evaluation of that. So it's sort of an ongoing process. But what struck me, and I think we all have to keep this in mind, is the FOIL issues are also related to the suggestions made at the public hearing. Because a lot of the suggestions at the public hearing add X, Y, and Z to the website or add more disclosure from, for example, candidates for office or what have you, raise the same issue that you could, in the abstract, say that's a great idea, but if it's going to require more staffing, more costs, slow other things down, we obviously have to take that into account so that the very helpful spreadsheet that Sandy distributed a few weeks ago, which summarized each of the recommendations made at the public hearing, have to carry with it as we evaluate that. How much will it cost and have an evaluation of that. And that's directly related to the FOIL issues. So we have gone through all of that, and I have now, Sandy's suggestion, I have now discussed most of the recommendations assigned to the Communications Committee to the second committee that's listed on the sheet. I've discussed it with the chair of the committee, suggested to him or her how we think this particular issue should be resolved. And I've circulated it to education committees, given me the feedback. And the chairs of the other committees I'm waiting to hear from. So we will know whether both committees agree with the particular approach outlined, so that when we get to the September meeting, we will be able to say communications and education agree that with respect to suggestion A, we should do X, Y, or Z, taking into account the burdens, if I can use that phrase, and the pluses and minuses of doing it. So that's a major issue. The staff is working on it, Emily and you all, and we will be meeting so that by the time we get to the September meeting, we will have concrete recommendations, at least with the Communications Committee, that have been assigned along with, be it ethic, and assigned along with, be it for way to do things. So that took up a great deal of our time, but that's ongoing. We also have two other items on the agenda. Obviously, public hearing recommendations is related to what I just said. And then we did not have time, and we will be getting to it, is to deal with the issue of the open meetings law. I think we have a general consensus that we would like to eliminate the physical requirement, the physical attendance requirement. The open meetings law will inevitably be discussed by the legislature.
For community.
Will be discussed by the legislature this year because it expires in 2024 by its terms. And so we have to discuss exactly what we're going to propose in terms of eliminating the physical attendance requirement, and also discuss how we're going to try to achieve that result working with interested people. We still have a lot to do, but that's where we came at.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Commissioner Cardozo? All right, thank you for that report. So anything from ethics?
We're meeting tomorrow.
Thank you. Lobbying or legal, we'll get to when we do the special committee lobbying. And anything from your end?
No, Chair.
All right, thank you. So the special committee and the proposed resolution. Vice Chair Austin. And you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Those famous words.
Okay, we had a draft that we were working from at not the last meeting, but the April meeting. I had drafted something, and Dolly had made some very helpful suggestions. Sandy had volunteered to have the staff draft something that might be more coherent to what our goal was. They did so, and they did a wonderful job, and thank you to the staff who were involved in doing that. I circulated that, and I got responses from a couple of members of the one member of the committee and one non-member of the committee who responded with some ideas and some tweaks to it. And Dolly and completed a revised draft, which is before you now. Its title was changed to Protect the Innocent. It's a resolution on procedures for issuance of informal advice and guidance to persons within the Commission's jurisdiction. It basically says exactly what we intend to do and sets forth some an outline of procedures that I think gives the public a very clear perspective, and certainly our customers, if you will, within the executive and legislative branches, as to how we operate, how they communicate with us, and what we do with regard to precedent and with regard to non-precedent items that come before. I think that was a major concern when we discussed this at the April meeting, and we now have, I think, a very coherent, clear statement as to our procedures, what the staff is going to be doing when they get something that's novel or different and not part of our precedential experience, and to give us then the opportunity to be involved in considering what the rules should be, as well as, and equally important, it gives us the opportunity to be able to opine with regard to that which is precedent and address any precedent that with which we are concerned and we believe needs review and either changing or tweaking or leave it alone. So those are the categories into which it falls. I think we are more involved in the process, but in a far less, I think, intrusive manner from the perspective of the staff, so that we can all do our jobs more effectively and coherently. So before you, not what's in tab F, but what was sent around earlier today or last night, is the final draft that is being presented. Other than Nancy, Michael, and Dolly, I've heard no other comments from anyone with regard to it. I'm very comfortable with it. I spoke to Sandy. I believe the staff is comfortable with it and understands, I think this codifies what our role is in the process. And I would move it to be a policy of the commission.
So let's get a second and then we'll discuss it. Is there a second to the motion? Commissioner Carvalho. Conversation, comments. Commissioner Ayers.
I think so, just to make sure, is the title, so the differences between tab F and the piece of paper that we're actually voting on, is the title the only difference, or are there not?
No, basically, it was tweaked just a bit. We broke out paragraph 2 so that it's clearer in terms of sub-concepts within it. We now have A's and B's and small 1s, 2s, and 3s. Basically, it says the same thing. We just made it a clearer read. We included paragraph 5, and kind of went back and forth on that quite a bit in terms of our
Right.
taking the initiative.
So the handout is what we got by email yesterday.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great.
What you got yesterday is what I've been talking about. And that is the subject of the motion. But conceptually, it's not terribly different with what you saw in tab F. And just so that the commission knows, at the last meeting, the special committee was charged with finishing this for this meeting and being prepared to discuss delegation at the December meeting. So the task was bifurcated. We wanted to get this done first. We have a draft that Ava was kind enough to prepare, and we will start our I'm sorry, and we'll start our work on that.
Chair Austin.
You're back, New York.
Thank you, Vice Chair Austin. It seems as if you were talking away there for a while. We didn't hear any of that.
I'm sorry, one to a customer.
There you go. All right. So
I think I left off at the April meeting. I'm sorry, at the May meeting, the commission decided to break up and bifurcate the two tasks of the special committee, making the discussion in terms of guidance, in effect, returnable for this meeting, which is what we've done in this product. And then the committee will then go into the guidance portion and our charge is to be prepared to report and give a final version of our plan with regard to guidance at the end of the year at the December meeting. So
Do you mean delegation?
I'm sorry?
I think you mean delegation.
Yes.
I'm sorry if I misspoke. Yes, delegation is for December. This is the guidance portion of our charge.
Yeah.
All right. And then I was saying, I think the important thing for us to look at and remember in the process is that when the staff gives a advice and guidance letter, it is binding on us that the person who made the request can rely on that and say, I didn't violate an ethics rule because I followed what the commission said. The only exception to that is going to be obviously if the requester gave false or fraudulent information or incomplete information. So we did not base our decision on the full set of facts. If a guidance letter is given and we then decide that that's not really a precedent we want to continue or we want to change it in some way, we are certainly free to do that, and this resolution provides for that. The difference being, an important difference being that, or not really a difference, but an important point to remember is that the advice we gave to that person who asked for it is still binding on us with regard to and can be relied upon. And in future prospective guidances, the new policy will be given. So the key word in paragraph 5 is prospective. We can supersede and have a different view, but that which we've already given can still be relied upon. It's still precedential for the individual who received that advice previously. Are there any questions?
So Commissioner Grunway, did you have a question? Commissioner Grunway.
First, I want to thank Commissioner Carvalho for sending out her email when she noticed that the book we received didn't include the most current version of her work. That's very helpful to me, and I think all of us, to know that as we're taking time to review the materials, we know we're looking at the right information. So thank you for that. Also, thank you for getting that out there in advance of the meeting, because while I wasn't at the last meeting, I watched the video and I knew what the intent was for this meeting, to bring this issue to closure. And when I saw Commissioner Carvalho's draft, I had some comments on it. So I think I circulated them to everyone in the commission, not just the committee, because I think doing so
lets everyone know at least what one member who will be voting on this thinks about. And I think it's an efficient way to work. If you see work out there whenever, and you have a comment that you want to make, even if it's in draft, I think it's important for each of us to be able to share that and share that with everyone so that our voice is heard. And Commissioner Kayama and Vice Chair Austin were very accommodating. They included me on a couple of phone calls to work through it. And I think even though I think my opposition or lack of support of the committee structure is well known, but I think the opportunity to because there was time to comment in advance, alleviated one of the concerns that I have with the committee structure, that it slows the work of the committee, of the commission down way too much. So, thank you.
So I just want to say, this is, the staff drafted this latest version, and then we worked on it. And I thought it was a very good draft, so thank you to start with. And I thought it brought us closer to where we wanted to be. And then with these changes, I hope we are where we want to be. So thank you.
Mr. Whittingham?
And just one question or clarity for Vice Chair Austin. Just now when you were speaking, you mentioned that the informal opinion will remain precedent for the person. Is that precedent up until the formal opinion is issued, which basically overrules that? So I would think that the person relying on it up until the point where we say, we don't want this to be precedent anymore, and we issue a formal opinion, they are okay. But the minute that the formal opinion is issued, are you saying that they can continue to rely on that informal opinion that they received previously, or will they now the formal opinion?
The answer is, I believe, and we discussed this at our last discussion on the document, is that the mindset was similar to what happens with judges. Judges seek informal opinions as to actions to be taken by the advisory committee, and the judges can rely on that opinion going forward. If the opinion changes later, the judge cannot be punished or brought up on charges for having followed what the opinion allowed. It's the same sort of concept. These, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the guidance letters that the staff gives are with regard to a particular set of facts for a particular action. Somebody wants to get an outside job as a college professor, an adjunct professor or something like that, and we allow that. That doesn't mean that the next time they want to go for that position, they have to ask, they can just assume that we've approved it once, we're approving it forever. They still have to come back and get permission the next time. It's the action that they took in response to that guidance that they are protected in. Am I correct in that?
I'm in agreement with you, but I think your statement previously suggests something different, because you stated that it remains precedent and did not make the distinction that if there's a formal opinion, I'm not speaking about retroactively. Of course, you're not going to sanction someone for something that they were told they could do. I just wanted you to clarify the statement in terms of after a formal opinion has been issued, that person would no longer be able to rely on it. Whatever action they took previously, it's okay, and we would not.
Exactly, yes. And if you look at paragraph 5, I think that covers it.
That's fine. It's the statement that you made. Just so I wanted to make sure it's clarified on the
I'm sorry
rest.
if I was confusing on that.
Anything else here? Any other questions, comments? So there's a motion on the floor to approve Are we ready to vote?
Sorry, one more clar, I'm sure this is obvious, but may rely upon, I think is a bit of a legal term of art. I
didn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll try to talk towards the little green UFOs that I think are the microphone. The term may rely upon, I think, being a little bit of a term of art. I just wanted to make sure I'm not alone in this. That means that they may rely on it as far as actions by this commission, but it doesn't in any way bind other enforcement bodies or criminal prosecutors or civil litigants or any other body, right? That's obvious.
You don't have the power to do that.
We wouldn't have the power to do that. We don't have the power to say that.
The only thing we could say is that we're not going to investigate an ethical violation because they relied on our opinion.
I just wanted to make sure that seems easily obvious to everybody. Thank you.
And I think the change in the title that Nancy suggested, I think covers it more clearly, as well as I think it was the second whereas clause that or the third, one of the whereas clauses kind of makes that clear as well. So I think we're okay on that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else here? Any other questions, comments? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of the resolution as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Carney, is Commissioner Carney opposed?
Commissioner Carney, were you an aye, or were you an nay, or were you an abstention?
I think I'm a little delayed. I'm an aye.
Great, thank you. Thanks. All righty, the resolution.
Chairman, may I just make one
Sure,
comment?
absolutely, yes.
I think, and I've always spoken of my opinion of the professionalism and ability of our staff. I think the effort that went into creating this resolution that's now passed, and I thank everybody for their support, demonstrates the collaborative spirit that the staff has demonstrated, and I think we are falling into that. And as we get more used to our jobs, I think we're all working together and really starting to accomplish some amazing things. So thank you to the staff, thank you to the commission. I think we have great things yet to accomplish, but I think the manner where we are now approaching each other is, I think, more confident and more comfortable, and I think that's vital and welcome.
And I would agree, I would concur with that, thank you. And I think there were a number of emails that went out over the last few days, week or so, where we acknowledged the sort of extraordinary work that this staff is doing. I want to echo that and just say I want everybody to know, particularly staff, how much we appreciate the effort that's being made here and the progress that's being made to move this commission forward and to have it live up to the mandate that we have in the legislation. So thank you. Alrighty, where are we? So do we want to do the freedom of information law?
Yes, item 5 on the agenda, up for adoption is proposed freedom of information law regulation at 19 NYCRR Part 987.
Commissioner Cardozo has
Yes,
I just wanted to say that we had tabled this from the last meeting to give the Communications Committee an opportunity to look at this. And as I said in our meeting, we did review it. There have been some minor changes which are reflected on page 1 of tab G. And you can see it in the red line as well. I think it also highlights what Brennan's just said, is that, we met with the staff, discussed this, we learned about the potential major problems that we don't take into account the burdens that we're imposing on staff. And so we've agreed to continue to work on this and to learned or can be updated. And the staff, agreed that they'll be working with us on it. So I think this is a joint effort, and I'd like to formally move the adoption of this.
Thank you. It has been moved. Is there a second? And then we can discuss. Commissioner James, seconded. Conversation.
Let me just, further to what Commissioner Cardozo has said. Let me just note that the adoption of FOIL regulations fulfills the Commission's obligation under the Public Officers Law, under the FOIL statute, to adopt regulations implementing the statute. So that's the first part. We have received comments, which Commissioner Cardozo referred to, from a combined comment from a number of watchdog groups as they describe themselves. The Communications Committee did, after the tabling of the prior presentation, did consider those. And so we have 3 proposed additional amendments to the proposed FOIL regulations. One, as the Commissioner said, opens the possibility for additional documents and information being put on the Commission's website. Another is that in the event an individual wants to come and review materials at the Commission's offices, they can do that not only at the Albany office, but we'll make space available at the New York City office if they wish to do that. And then finally, and it's consistent with practice, if an individual requester wants information provided in a particular format, we'll do our best to comply with that. And if we can't do it that way, we will work with them to come up with an acceptable way for their receiving information. So this is the 3 changes from the original proposal.
Questions, Commissioner Whittingham?
Just a quick question. How do we address an issue where someone may want to come and inspect, but we may not be ready? We may not have the material ready. What do we do in those circumstances?
That's part of our response. Our response is that it will take whatever period of time we project to have the materials prepared and available for inspection. There are ways to do that. It could be incremental. For example, if we have to retrieve data and it has to be processed, if we have to redact protected confidential information from documents, that takes a period of time. And that would be part of the response that's provided statutorily, independently of the regulations or statutory obligation to respond to the initial request. Within 5 days, indicate what we think estimated amount of time it's going to take to apply the response. And as the information is gathered, if we need more time, whether it's on a partial basis, rolling basis, et cetera, then we inform the requester.
So we would specifically tell the requester that, let's say, for example, they're like, today, July 19th, they would like to come to inspect, that we don't have those materials and that we're going to arrange for another time for them to come, but not, for example, that it will be provided in another medium if their request is to inspect.
You have a specific request in mind?
I mean, like the same one you get, I just get the emails and I'm hearing, I just want to know, because I want to know what the policy is with this here. I believe that Mr. Brandow may have requested that he be present tomorrow, July 20th, in the office to inspect. The response that I saw was that it was going to be provided in electronic format. So my question was just like, okay, if the requester is saying they don't want it in that format, do we say to them, which based on the request for 166 records that's outstanding, it might need time from the staff to redact it. So in that instance, do we say to them, we are not able to accommodate you on the 20th, but we would be able to accommodate you at a later time? Or is it sufficient to simply say, we're going to provide that to you in an electronic format?
But what we have done in that instance, and it would be consistent with practice, is to say we need such and such an amount of estimated time if we know the estimate or we're obtaining an estimate. In that instance, the work has to have, we have to obtain a contract with the vendor to prepare the documents. So we have to go through that process before we can put a specific time frame on it. And then we have indicated, as we would, this would be standard practice. You can have it, if we can do it, in this format, you can have it in that format, you can come and look at them, but you can't come and look at them until they're prepared. In a way, redactions, for example, have been completed.
If I could just add on to that, Sandy?
Yes, Emily.
Sorry. I just want to clarify, it's not 166 records, it's thousands of pages of documents that all need to be reviewed and redacted. So we are getting estimates for that to be done, to scan those documents in, redact them, so they will only be redacted in electronic form. So that is the reason for the electronic provision rather than to come in and inspect, because come in and inspect, the paper records will still have that personal confidential information on them, which is why we're seeking an alternate route through a vendor to be able to produce the records as requested.
Commissioner Longwagon?
Fine, and as we basically stated that time, so we are proposing, because we're redacting it, now we're looking at a vendor. Have we stated that clearly so we don't have someone come into the office and then we're saying, we can't do it?
I believe we have, and we communicated that as soon as we get the estimate from the vendor about how long it will take, then we'll better be able to provide the requester with a date certain on when we can get the documents to him. But I don't have that date yet because I need to get that from the vendor.
Okay, but I just the only thing I'm trying to clarify is not whether or not you'll be turning over those documents that you've stated in electronic format, whether or not the party, whether it's this person or someone else, it could be a party that is not able, may not have the wherewithal to access it electronically. Would they have some way of reviewing it, publicly inspecting the record as we are now stating in this, in our FOI, the law that we have right here, or the regulation that we're putting forward? This particular individual may have the means, may have a way to do it electronically. What happens if the person requesting does not? So the real crux of my question is if it would be available for public inspection if they come to our office.
There are a number of things we could do that we've looked at in the past, and set aside any particular request, but just in the abstract, as you pose it. So if somebody, I don't know, has some sort of impairment where they couldn't work with electronic media, if that were the case, I guess at the extreme, the electronic information which they're wishing to review would have to be regenerated in hard copy form. That would seem to be an inefficient and probably excessively costly way of doing it. The statute might counsel against that, requiring that to be the case. We could set up, we've done this, it's been done in the past, I'm sure other agencies do it, set up a means for that individual if they don't have their own means of electronically accessing the information at a location. We'd work through, the statute calls for both sides, the requester and the agency, trying to work together to come up with a way to provide the information.
So
the answer.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying the answer would depend on the situation, circumstances, and I suppose the specific abilities or the challenges faced by the individual who's making the request.
See, I just want to make sure that if we are stating that you have a right to come and publicly inspect, then maybe if it is only electronic that we can do it, then possibly, I don't know if what that may require. And this is not just for any particular, one particular requester, but there are, as we have discussed, where they're saying they're individuals without email addresses who are on staff for the state, right? So they're individual at the public that would not have that. Maybe is there a public computer that they can review it on electronically or something of that nature? So my only, as I've said, the crux of it is, will that be available coming in and inspecting?
Yeah, and let me say something, talking about the 166 ones, these are required by, like the statute, they're collected, if sent to our agency. Some were sent in paper form. Some were sent on DVDs or on film. Some they're not in data form, but they may come as PDFs on some sort of electronic media, or they may come in hard copy. And that's how we have them. So in instances where individuals have requested to come in and review other documents, if we can make some sort of means available on site. The challenge we have with 166 is that they do contain information that we are not permitted by the statute to make available. So these documents have to be redacted. We have prospectively made changes to the 166 form that agencies are collected so that we can eliminate the confidential information from them so we can avoid redacting. The next step going forward will try to be to set up a mechanism for these forms to be completed in an electronic, so they'll be more readily searchable. And will that resolve the issue or create a different issue for individuals who are incapable, for whatever reason, of using electronic means? We're hoping not. So, as having a terminal that we could put out, or setting up a computer in a room so that they can access it electronically. If somebody is willing to observe the cost, print them out in hard copy.
That would be my suggestion, if it's not too burdensome, if it's possible that we would just have, maybe it's a single terminal. And so if you want to come in on this day and someone else already has an appointment, you're not able to come in, but at least we have that facility available. So you are saying, I want to come and inspect, you can, if it's not a burdensome request.
Yeah, and that in and of itself, in this particular instance that you're citing, is not the challenge is we get the confidential information that we're not permitted to put out there, the documents, and we don't have electronic documents so we can sort that out. So we have to have a vendor convert them and remove that information so we can make it.
And I understand that, but it's more widespread than this. This is just what came to my attention, but I just in general wanted that, because we've spoken about state staff not even having an email address, that we.
Yeah, there are many permutations of the issue. One thing, for example, the lobbying group has been working very hard at, I don't want to get ahead of an announcement that will be made with popular citizens, is taking as much data as possible, making it just separately, publicly accessible. It's available now through our website. Others want another form. We're doing everything. We discussed it with the communications committee, and they strongly support making as much data as possible available out there. If we get to the point where we can do that with the 166 forms as well, that would be a terrific development.
What are again the 166 forms?
These are appearance forms that are required when appearances are made before a designated group of about a dozen agencies by individuals or their representatives, and they're completed by individuals when they appear. Agency classes sends up to us.
I think we have Commissioner Groenewegen and then Commissioner Cardoza.
I have a few things, but I just had a couple of overall comments or questions I think first for council, that do the revisions being proposed here require that this revised reg now start the whole notice and comment period over? Because I don't know if these qualify as substantial revisions that require, that's a kind of question. I know Megan or
Megan, this has Megan Patolo, Deputy Director of Law. Megan, go on.
Hi, can you hear me? So the Department of State requires substantial revisions to go back out for revised rulemaking. And they've claimed that a substantial revision is any addition, deletion, or any other change in the text of a rule proposed for adoption which materially alters its purpose, meaning, or effect. So we talked about it internally. Sandy was included on these discussions, and we decided that we didn't think that these were substantial because they didn't affect the purpose, meaning, or effect of the regulation, whether they just clarify what we are already doing. Because these changes were something that we already were doing. It's no additional requirement on any requester. It just kind of clarifies our process. So we decided not to go back out for a private public.
A second question I had was, were the comments that,
Can you go on mute again, please?
a second question, were the comments that we received on these, like, circulated to the commission?
Yeah.
Okay, then I missed them. One general comment I have is, this, I think, goes to Commissioner Cardozo's point and what the executive director was just saying about the burdens that compliance with the Freedom of Information Law places on staff. I remember saying at an earlier meeting, because I know from my work experience, how time consuming, incredibly time consuming compliance with FOIL is. And I think we've got to understand that when we urge the staff, to get as much on the public website as possible, that's presumably exactly what they want to do. I think I heard Emily say it during the committee meeting that I was watching, that's in their interest, because the more things they cannot get on the website, the more often they can refer the requester to that. And so I think we as a commission need to appreciate that staff's presumption is to always do that when they can, other things, other nations permitting. So I think we need to start from the presumption that staff who are administering the Freedom of Information Law know what they're doing. They have every interest in expediting the process. And I think we've always got to keep that in mind. The other thing, I see the changes that were made here. And a big one that we've added to the list, the regular per diem amount on it, but that's not in this list. And maybe it doesn't need to be, because if you go on the website for just about any other executive branch agency to their FOIL, which they all have, and I don't know if we do yet, but presumably we do, there's the ability to put banners announcing that something new has been added to the list of documents that are available. You don't always have to be amending the regulations to do that. And I know this catch-all has been written to say that we'll add additional documents. Did that need to be in the regulations? I don't know. I don't know that I would have taken the time to amend the regs as opposed to find another alternative means of communicating with the public. I think what a lot of the whole system, regulatory system, the state, sometimes doesn't reflect the reality of the internet, and that most of the information anybody looks for these days, nobody goes to NYCRR, the green books to start finding this thing. I don't even think they go to the Secretary of State's website to find all of them electronically. They go to the agency's website. And I think that's where we want the information to be. The advantage of relying on the website for something like adding to the list of documents that are available is that you don't have to go back and amend your reg. It's out there. All you're saying is this is now available on the website. And avoiding the need to amend regulation, because that too, the whole SAPA process is incredibly time consuming. And so I would just caution us as commissioners to be mindful of that. And the other thing I would say too is, we may not all be aware of it, but I'm sure the staff is that if the staff, improperly denies a request and takes us to court, and it's found that we didn't have a justification for withholding the information, we pay the attorney's fees. And I think staff knows all that. That's how they're doing their job every single day. with all this information about how government works, all these things they have to keep in mind that we as commission members don't. And I think it's imperative that we start with a presumption always that staff know what they're doing it conscientiously and the best they can.
Commissioner Cardoza.
Well, give a bottom line that Emily is now the records access officer. She is, based upon the committee's conversation, she is very, very aware of this. And the only issue is the practicality and the reports. But obviously, the more we have on the website, the less we have to worry about responding to a flow of questions. So we're very, very aware of it. At the same time, we're aware of the demands, because obviously you need electronic help to do this. And unfortunately, that agency that deals with things like this is quite busy and deals with all other relevant agencies. So that we don't have a unique technical agency. We have to rely on the agency, statewide agency.
We mean ITS.
I mean,
ITS, yeah.
Yes. So, but I think there's no dispute among any of us on that fact. When we met with the staff, they explained some of the practicalities they have to deal with. But we all share the same goal, and I know Emily does. And while we can sure find examples where it's taken us a long time, the statute says if you can't comply in the 20 days, you have to give an estimated time of arrival. And Emily is committed to make that time as short as possible. So I think we're all on the same page on this. And we have the basic conflict that, we don't want to take on $1 million obligation without understanding that it may cost them, making that up, $1 million to do that. If it's going to take $1 million, we have to evaluate, the need to do that.
Commissioner Edwards.
Thank you.
Sorry, Commissioner Harris.
It's a director. Let's go ahead, please.
I think that at our last meeting with communications, we had a long discussion around this. Number one, I can't imagine I haven't been in the presence of any commissioner who believes that that's not doing their very best and committed to getting material out. One. Number two, at the committee, we expressed our interest in always making more information available that goes beyond what's required of us to make available. We talked about that. And three, staff talked to us about their desire to do the same. However, that would mean taking all of the hard copies that they have and committing it to some digital form and the cost associated with that. And our position was that if that's indeed the case, and our ultimate goal, we need to have a sense of what it would take to get everything turn everything that's hard copy into digital for X amount of years, and then advocate for funding to make that happen. So we understand it's a long-term process, but we're committed to at least bringing it to the Commission's attention, the need to advocate for funding to make that possible.
Harris.
Thanks. So a few things, I guess. One, renewing my request that all documents presented to the commission have who generated them and when they generated it. The summary, proposed rule, and timeline are very helpful, but I think it'd be really useful to know that that's staff and also the committee, if that's the case, or that it came from staff. I think it may be challenging for a member of the public to distinguish the summary and timeline from the actual text of the papers. So second, just a question, since we're talking about the requests for the forms that come in under Executive Law 166, which I had never heard of before this conversation, so I'm not claiming any expertise, but it looks like this record of appearances, the whole point of them is that they're open to public inspection. So I'm curious about why they would have to be redacted. It looks like this is a document that's specifically generated so that it can be made public. And that's to my third question, which is sort of broader. I hope that in terms of minimizing the workload on staff, I hope that whatever forms we are responsible for designing, wherever possible, put all the confidential information on one page and all the public information on another page, so that redaction isn't really something we have to do. It seems, I mean, there may be some things like financial disclosure forms where you can't avoid it because maybe every single thing in there is personally identifying, and then we just don't release the form. But it does seem like there's got to be a lot of things where we can do, and maybe we're already doing it, but so I guess that's a question.
Yes, in the case of 166, as I said, 166 forms, we've now revised the form going forward. So it doesn't have the confidential information. We don't think it's necessary. At this point, so we're just taking it out. In the meantime, we have this collection, which needs to electronically be essentially scrubbed of that confidence. It's not substantive as far as we're concerned.
Is that confidential because it's like they're appearing in front of us in an investigative proceeding where it's confidential that exists?
No, it's absolutely confidential information, signatures, for example. Signatures can't be propagated by agencies, so we have to take those off the documents.
So the old form just wasn't.
It wasn't adapted to modern technology. People coming in and taking pictures, signatures that have to be taken, and there's some, we believe, personal cell numbers, again, not propagated, so we have to we're taking the telephone numbers off. It's simple as that.
Okay.
But I say it's simple. We have to get a contractor to run these things through. Sure. Optical scanning equipment with recognition software.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I can't remember if we had a motion on the floor or not. Made the motion. Who seconded it? Was it James? Okay.
James.
All right, great. So the motion's on the floor. Are we ready to vote to approve this rate? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, item 6.
Item 6, I'm going to turn this over in a moment to Michael Sand, our Director of Ethics. The first section of Executive Law, Section 94, sub-F, calls for the Commission to conduct a review of all regulations and advisory opinions for internal consistency, and that's including advisory opinions of antecedent predecessor ethics and lobbying agencies, as well as for consistency with the provisions of ECRA. The Ethics Committee Report Act 2022, and all to make sense of the effectiveness of the existing laws, regulations, guidance, and ethics enforcement structure. Michael has circulated to commissioners, prepared an outline for structuring that exercise. Circulated electronically, it's far too big to provide a printed a spreadsheet that summarizes all of the ethics opinions. I do want to say we're going to be adding some of the lobbying advisory opinions to that and provide a supplement following the meeting. And so you can see those as well. Carol, is there anything else that we needed to add before Michael takes over?
No, just that we do have a chart, a summary of the 67 lobbying opinions, advisory opinions. The other thing I'll point out is, unlike in ethics, the comprehensive lobbying regulations, the source of funding regulations, and the gift regulations, for the most part, either codify or supersede the virtually all, but not of the 67 opinions anyway. So that's the only thing I will point out. And we can circulate the chart of the advisory opinions for lobbying shortly.
All right, and you'll note on those which are superseded by the regulations.
Absolutely.
All right, Michael.
So this is potentially a large project. And I had mentioned in the past that I was attempting to prepare a thematic, written document, but after listening to the commissioners discuss what I think they wanted and kind of concluding on my own that what I was working on wouldn't really satisfy the mandate and the statute. What I did was I've separated the statutes, the regulations, and the advisory opinions as well as I could into discrete subject matter. And I've provided the spreadsheet that staff has created, which provides a blurb of all 353 ethics advisory opinions. And a nice thing about this document is that it's a Word document, so it's searchable. So you can search for key terms. And you can use it as a resource, either to check to see what the advisory opinion says and say, okay, that's fine, it's consistent, or it could kind of set up a flag. I say, no, at this point now, I'll go read the full opinion. And as I said, this is a large job, so my thinking was that these reviews could be divided perhaps among the committees by subject matter.
And this is in response to the commissioner's request that we take a comprehensive review of all existing advisories.
Pursuant to the mandate in the statute.
Mandate in the statute. Thank you. Comments, questions? Commissioner Harris, Commissioner Gronway?
I just really want to say thank you. This is extraordinarily helpful. I think it's exactly the kind of roadmap that we need to be able to get started effectively on the comprehensive review, and I'm really grateful. My understanding is that the special committee is supposed to try to plan out how to do the comprehensive review, and I think this seems like an outline. So one quick question, one thought. The thought is so good that it seems to me that it maybe should be a map for how the website works, in terms of having a single place where you can look at all of the relevant statutes, all the relevant regs, and all the relevant advisory opinions all organized, and the web would allow you to hyperlink those.
Sure.
But the question is just, I'm amazed that you were able to sort the laws and regs and advisory opinions into a mere 9 categories. That seems like a remarkable achievement of sorting and categorization. Do you feel like that leaves any significant categories out, or do those 9 categories really capture the scope of our authority?
Many subcategories fall within the category of conflict of interest.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yes.
Again, Michael?
Many subcategories of topics that we deal with fall within the larger subject of conflict of interest.
And what about the sort of general, somewhere in section 90, somewhere in the code of conduct section, there's that sort of blanket, it's not appearance of impropriety, but it sounds like that some of our stuff comes under. Where's that sort of miscellaneous catch-all?
The appearance of a conflict?
No, sorry, I can find it in just a second. The one that's in the government ethics laws. Sorry, I'll have it in one second. 74.3H, raising
the public trust.
A course of conduct which will raise suspicion among the public that they're likely to be engaged in acts that are in violation of their trust. Yeah, because we've said that sexual harassment, I think, or discrimination can fall under those.
Possibly.
Or that's an issue we need to look at. Where do those fall in terms of your map of 9?
I think it potentially falls, it applies to almost all of them.
Yeah, okay, right. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Garland.
Commissioner Harris said everything I need to say, so nothing, thank you.
Anyone else?
Just a quick comment. Michael, I think most of them said come under conflict. I think the other big category is really schools employment that you really see a lot of inquiry coming in,
Yes.
for that there. I think we have quite a slew there that we need to look at. And nothing much has, because I know where you talk about the opinion that supersedes. Besides that, not much has changed in that department.
That's true. Not much. 1801 kind of clarified.
One second, Mike. Commissioner Austin, would you mind muting, please? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just saying that it's true, the post-employment advisory opinions have generally remained consistent throughout time. And advisory opinion 1801 provides kind of a restatement or a clarification of everything that came before in post-employment.
This is quite a monumental task.
I would add just one more thing that Michael and I have talked about. Also the 2019 comprehensive guide on ethics and lobbying law in the state is a useful adjunct. I'm working through this exercise.
It's a very useful resource.
It gives you more text, and it will include the case law, those instances in which there's case law. So there's a lot of information to guide this process.
Right. So we need to refer this to a committee or committees. Seems like ethics, and
Didn't we already decide that the special committee is going to review is going to come back with recommendations on how to proceed with the
delegation.
comprehensive review? No, at the last meeting, I thought we decided that it was. Am I wrong?
I don't know. That's why there seems to be sometimes, I don't know, back and forth as to what committee it is, but I thought, yeah, we were probably going to be in line with addressing some of these issues, but I don't know.
And a special commissioner, Austin, Vice Chair Austin, you have any remembrance or thoughts or opinions on this?
I don't think he was here at the last meeting. He wasn't here.
Discussion, but you seem.
I think.
Committee wants to do it.
I thought it came out of the ethics committee, but if the special committee wants to do this.
It's a delegation reason.
Okay, good.
Vice Chair Austin, I think, is not.
Vice Chair Austin, will you unmute now and talk to us?
No, I think he's doing something else, but I spoke to him yesterday by phone, and my recollection was that we talked about this at the last meeting, and there was a concern raised that with all the other things going on, it would be challenging to make much progress on the comprehensive review. And in response, some of us felt, well, maybe we should chart one of the committees with sort of road mapping how we're going to do the comprehensive review. That would be the special commission, and that's what Vice Chair Austin was talking about when he said by December, we're going to get back to everybody with that. I could be misremembering it, but that's my recollection of what happened.
I thought he was talking about delegation, wasn't it?
Okay, cool.
Commissioner Gromwick.
I just have a question.
Sure.
As I'm watching this conversation about which committee is doing what, I would ask first, is there anybody among the commission members who has an interest in coming up with a single person coming up with a roadmap for how to do this? It seems to me that what the work product is for the full commission's consideration is a roadmap. And it seems most efficient to me if one person crafted a roadmap, circulated it to everybody. If you want to comment on it, comment on it. If you don't really have a strong feeling about it, don't comment on it. But at least it doesn't, you don't have to worry about calling meetings that are subject to the open meetings law. You get prompt feedback, everybody sees the feedback. It just strikes me as a far more efficient way to do a task that is just a roadmap. I can see when you get to the actual review, you might want to do it differently, but it seems we perpetually are bogging ourselves down in our own internal procedures that, from my perspective, and I can't speak from the staff, but I would suspect many of the staff agreed, just slow us down. In us, by us, I mean not just the commission, I mean the entire agency. So it's just a recommendation for this one task.
So we have 3 people that are interested in doing it.
Just a comment.
Sure.
I think what Michael has prepared, is could be it's a great roadmap for what we should be doing. Maybe then what we want to do is, if you're saying one person do X or Y, I think, any one person doing any of this, it's a lot, but would be to say who's interested in working on it, and then those individuals divide up what they're going to do from these different sections, because I do believe this is a great roadmap in terms of categorizing, under what the violation, what the statute is. This really does provide us with a roadmap. So I think that is complete. And then what we want to do now is the actual work. And then who gets the actual work? And maybe your question is relevant as to who may have an interest and who may want to say, okay, this little team, I'm going to do 1, I'm going to do 2, I'm going to do 3. If someone wants to take on that mission, and maybe that's how we go about it. And it seems to be an interest. Yes,
and we're all on the delegation or guidance or special committee already, right?
So I think what we're talking about is an action. So who's going to do what, when, and what, and do what, and by when. So what we can ask you to do, minimal, as the delegation committee, since it seems that that's where this lies, you may be off the hook on this at least, but
So you don't about agenda process.
for the delegation committee to come back at the special meeting of committees, which we're going to schedule for early September, is a piece of new business. We'll get with not so much a roadmap, but an action plan. So since the roadmap is here, who's going to, I can't continue that metaphor, but who's going to do what pieces of this, as Commissioner Winningham said, and by
Why don't the 3 of us talk, and we can, I do think that by email, I think we're all in the delegation committee. But I think Nancy's right that a lot of this can be done by email, because a lot of what needs to be done is just drafting a document, and if we want to divide that up.
And I would think if this committee is sharing these thoughts, they would be shared with everybody, so we know what you're thinking.
Right, sure. And we'll get that at the September special meeting. That's just my request.
If you want to, Commissioner Ayers, or I defer to both of you, if one of you wanted to actually do the action plan and not present it in September, but maybe before that, so we can see what we want to do there. Sure. Because it seemed like we were all willing to, right? We'll defer to you guys to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to start the discussion by drafting a document. I'll share it to you two because you're interested, so we'll have an initial. Great.
But I think others might be.
Oh, no, and I'm just, we'll get to the whole commission.
Back, and then we'll circulate.
And I think you were referring to Michael's memo about delegation, right? Is that what you meant?
It's here that
Michael's, yes, that. Oh, absolutely. Yes, of course.
That, Michael, I believe it's a good roadmap, because when I am looking at ethics opinion, I typically try to put them and sort them in categories as well, which he has done already. And he has also identified the different statutes and the public officer laws. So then, let's say, for example, so there are now 4 of us, and there might be more. The 4 of us said that, okay, we want to really tackle this and do this. So Nancy, you're doing 1. Ava, you're doing 2. I mean, it's a lot of work, but we can do it. I think, as I look at this, and as I mentioned just now to Michael, 6 with post-employment restriction has the most opinions, right? So perhaps there are 2 individuals who want to work on that. And you're simply saying from here to there, you are in charge of reviewing them and going back. And that can be done and not have the meetings that you're against. Or not against, let me rephrase. Withdrawn, I'll rephrase, you have, concerns about. So with that in mind, because I could see me saying, all right, I'll do all of 1, the conflict and recusal generally, reading those opinions are good. And then we setting up a deadline that we must have comments or suggestions. Somebody else is doing that. Although we're not saying it's this committee, it's individuals, it's not one person doing it. We're just doing different sections which will be shared with everyone.
Which I think makes sense for how this body deals with every task that needs to be.
But I'm going to disagree with that.
Okay.
Strongly right now, because I don't think we can slide into saying how we're going to structure the work of the body without serious consideration. So I'm going to strongly disagree with that.
I agree.
As a paradigm for how we work, because it feels chaotic, actually. If you ask me, at the moment, it feels a little chaotic.
That would be without the plan, Chair, as I request, would Commissioner Ayers said she would do it. That would be the plan.
I understand. I totally get it. But the fact that we just kind of slid into this without, I think what we need is a real review of our committee structure. And then if we don't like it, let's reform it. But let's not try to reform it on the fly by saying, now we'll do it this way and now we'll do it that way. That's not a way to operate, in my opinion. And I'm for sure.
Well, myself actually not having strong opinions about committee structure, maybe a sort of more moderate way of describing what's happening here would be to say, I think that Director Michael has given us a great way of organizing the topics, and what remains for us is just to figure out a workflow for the commission that uses our existing committee structure. And so that what I plan to draft and then sort of workshop first with those who have an interest and then circulate to the whole commission would be just something that expresses, all right, well, we've got a bunch of committees. We've got a massive task that overlaps with the jurisdiction of every single committee. We've got some sort of general considerations, my views on plain language that should probably be injected at the beginning of the discussion, not at the very end. So how's that workflow going to work? So this is not, in my view, this is not anything that's going around or overturning the current committee structure, nor does it enthusiastically embrace that. I think it goes around this whole conversation by just saying, I'm going to try to help start a conversation about a workflow, but I share it with interested folks first and then share it with the whole commission.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So I think that's what we're saying.
Well, what's unique is that the interest within delegation committee as part of our structure, because at least my understanding is anyone who wants to chime into a committee can do so. So the 4 of you who want to do it, it works within the structure. It's just being held in the concept of delegation committee. But uniquely, the only people interested at the table, or the people who have expressed interest at the table, are delegation committee and yes. And Commissioner.
Try to be clear about my point is simple. There is dissatisfaction as expressed with the committee structure. If we're going to change it, let's be thoughtful about how we do it. Let's not say, oh, now this is a new approach that we can take so that we don't have to do structure. I don't think that.
Anybody said that?
Okay, that's what I heard. So I don't think that is an approach that we should, and if that's not what's being proposed, well, okay, thank you. Alrighty, what do we need to do with this? No actions needed here, other than the fact that it should be reflected on the minutes that Commissioner Ayers will get a process started where she will outline a plan of action for how we will address these issues comprehensively as presented to us by Michael Sands, and that she will work closely with Commissioners Whittingham and Carvalho and Bromwood in the development of that plan, and then distribute it to the rest of the commission for review. And then we'll talk about it at this September meeting, special meeting in September, if we get a schedule, and then see where we go from there.
And we need us to set an LBCC, Sandy on all of that, because that's the rates.
All right?
Yep.
So that's going to be reflected. Why don't we just codify it? So that, will somebody move what I just?
I move that, I second the motion.
Okay.
To chart.
So let's just reflect that on the minutes, because it's a good way to memorialize things. And then when we are unclear,
We can go back.
3 meetings from now, we can come back and refer to this.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so are we ready to vote? All in favor of the motion that Commissioner Ayers will lead on this, working closely with Commissioner Whittingham and Carvalho and Groenewegen, and then we'll get some direction from them at the special meeting in September. All those in favor, aye? Opposed, no? Abstentions? Passes. Thank you.
Thanks.
So new business, can we talk about this? Oh, sorry, Nick.
I just want really old business.
Sure.
We had said 2 meetings ago to take another look at whether, once you request an interim, request an advisory opinion, talking about what the governor asked us to do, and then that sort of became moot. But then we still had to look.
We're still in public session.
Pardon me?
We're in public session.
I see. Okay, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Wrong place to raise the issue. I apologize.
Any other, I have a new business item. Anybody else with new business?
Yeah, so just following up on the email I sent, I think two meetings ago, we talked about a resolution on committee procedures that I drafted and circulated, and so I'm wondering if we can discuss that, or?
Remind us, or at least remind me.
Yeah, I can forward it again if you like. So this is the resolution that I circulated that's,
Yes, last night. No.
was it
Earlier in the week.
over the weekend, I think?
Yeah.
or maybe it was Saturday. It's a draft resolution on committee procedures. It has, the easiest thing is just to, it has 4 little sections. I drafted it at the end of the meeting because I thought it reflected what we had all voted on and agreed on, and I had agreed to try to draft that into the form of a resolution. Sorry, I don't have the date or time of the email.
I'll try to find it.
It's,
That's the forwarded again this weekend.
Yeah, I have a copy of.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
may I ask you, can we take this up at our special meeting with in September with an understanding that we will focus, Mr. Grunley?
I'm sorry, no, I'll let you finish.
That will focus, that we will focus on this at the start, make it the number 1 item, only because.
I mean, so I'm okay with that. I guess I would say, my concern would just be that this is a resolution that says we're going to do committee charges and stuff, right? If that's what the September meeting is for.
Just resend it.
Yeah, because a lot of people are, Not that you didn't
Okay.
send it, but,
Yeah,
yeah, but that we just didn't.
Wait,
Well, this is the first time I sent it, and I forwarded it on Saturday.
well, wait, I thought you forwarded the one about memorializing that materials are circulated in advance to all.
Yeah, that's.
Is that the same one?
It's seven
And I don't-
23.
I'm gonna ask that we just table it till September. Are we okay with that?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
I just have one question.
Yeah, sure.
To the extent the resolution in paragraph 4 incorporates the vote we took and passed that materials are to be circulated to everyone, that is still in effect.
That is in effect.
And the
Yes.
reason I want to stress that that's still in effect is, as we heard Commissioner Cardoso say earlier, there is the draft annual report that has been out there as a final work product of staff since early July, but only a handful of the members have seen it.
Okay.
And I think, as I understand it now, that report, again, that was originally, what I was described as an excellent working draft, is now not going to be published or disseminated until September. And I think that's unfortunate for a variety of reasons. One, it was due in April and we knew it would be late, but now it's that much later. But it seems to me that if everyone gets a chance to see it, and again, if you have a substantive comment, I don't think we should ever be in the business of wordsmithing unless we're prepared to give specific language to replace it, not just general concepts. I think that document could be much farther along, and I still think it can be much farther along if it's circulated to everybody, reflecting the committee's comments now, asking people, if you have a comment or concern, record it, share it with all. Let Emily and the staff and the executive director try to resolve it. And since it does not have to be voted on, it just needs to get to the bodies that can see it. It seems to me, it's conceivable that that document could be shared with the governor, the legislature, and everybody else who has to have it in advance of September.
That's a whole nother topic.
Well, no, but it's an example of the importance of sharing the information.
So that is key. So
That's why it's an example.
I totally agree. So that is absolutely key. We said we would do it, but any information that goes to a committee would go to all commissioners. Absolutely. Whether or not we can get that annual report ready to share with the people who need to see it before September, that's another question that I would not put on that I recommend we not put on the table at this point. And then take direction from staff as to when they think it's ready to go. Okay. But I do agree with you. I just want to be clear. I do agree with you 100% that we said we would circulate materials and we should do that. Commissioner Cardoso.
I must say, I didn't plead guilty when
No,
but I think we have to keep in mind that giving general suggestions to draft one, if I can call it that, can be very productive. We have to be very careful, though. I'm sure we've all been on lawyer groups where, 25 people revising a brief results in no action.
Right.
And so I think in giving the suggestions, once you get the draft, we have to keep that tension in mind.
I couldn't agree more, and that's why I said, I don't think wordsmithing ever among a group is a productive task. I think if you have a concept, then somebody should be charged with writing that concept, but not try to draft by committee. And I think if anybody has a wordsmithing type suggestion, then you provide the specific language. It's just how people work efficiently. That's all.
Okay. The other thing I've seen work really well for us is redlining and sharing.
Right.
And so if we could do that when we have comments on documents, just take the document, redline it, and send it around. We'll have a couple of red, we have a lot of, some people's comments will be in blue, but at least we'll have a document that we're all working with. And we have the comments there for us to see, as opposed to them being in emails and our having to cobble them together and, sort of prepare different drafts and things like that. So if you want to, particularly for the annual report, if you have comments, it'd be substantive, but if you could include them on the document itself and then send it around, I think that would be better than trying to include it. Is that fair?
Good, thank you.
So,
Yeah, my thought would just be in terms of the resolution, I think it's a very straightforward, just 4 sentences that say what we all already agreed to. If it's just that folks missed the email and need more time to review it.
what do you want?
And I wonder if we.
Do you want to make the motion? Let's hear it. Let's hear the resolution as you understand.
Okay, sure. So I'll make the motion. The motion is to adopt the draft resolution. I'll skip the whereas clauses.
Sure.
The 4 substantive clauses are, when commission members are appointed to committees, those committees shall have the power to make recommendations on any question or issue on which the full commission votes to charge the committee with making recommendations. Right, so in other words, it's only as charged, it's only recommendation power. If the committee believes it's appropriate to address additional questions or issues, the committee must seek approval from the full commission to expand its charge before proceeding to develop recommendations. Which scope of authority can be general, but committee's power shall be limited to recommendations or proposals, unless the full commission gives a committee power to take additional action. Section 2, after staff schedule a time for a committee to meet, accommodating the schedule of committee members to the greatest extent possible, staff shall advise the full commission of the time and date of the meeting and the issues to be discussed at that meeting. So this is what we said before, and I think we've been doing this. I've been getting invitations to committee meetings that I'm not a member of, okay, number 3, any member of the commission who's not a member of a committee may attend a meeting of that committee, although they will not vote on recommendations the committee may choose to make.
And their presence doesn't go to the quorum.
That's a question that's not addressed here. I think that's an open meetings law issue. Yeah. And 4, finally, when materials relevant to committee meetings are circulated to the members of a committee, those materials shall also be circulated to all members of the commission. So that's it.
Yeah, there is an open meetings law legal issue that's implicated that I prefer to discuss, if we could, in executive session. So if we prefer.
What's the reason for executive session?
Because there's legal advice that I would like to pass along to commissioners to consider. But I think it's inappropriate to raise in an open session.
Okay, I'll note my standing skepticism of
And how that.
of discussing what should go into a public resolution and being consistent with the open meetings law, but since I don't know what the issue is, I'll defer to you and we can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really, committee can waive, I suppose, the privilege, but I think you first want to hear.
I move to table this till after we have the executive session.
Right, we can
Is there a second?
I will do it.
Second? Okay, as it's not debatable, as I understand it, all those in favor, either voted up or down, aye. Any opposed to tabling? All right. Table to executive session, and then we'll come back.
Okay, great.
I just have one other item of new business, and I wanted us to consider the official appointment of a parliamentarian for our meetings. We've had different people play the role.
Right.
And I think when it's a member of the commission, it can become problematic. And I would urge that a staff member, presumably the council or somebody like that, or anybody who is strong in parliamentary procedure, be designated to perform that role so that we're not surprised by different people chiming in with different.
And we'll know whether or not we're.
Yeah, I say that only because my knowledge of parliamentary procedure is probably lower than anybody else's. But I just think it's important to have a single staff member parliamentarian for the meeting.
Yeah, I would suggest general counsel serve in that role. I volunteer, Keith. I could say Keith is not here. He's not on because he's served lost, but he's doing well.
Get well soon, and you've got new responsibilities as of 30 seconds
That's what
ago.
happens when you have.
We need a motion to that effect.
We should memorialize it. Sure.
So I move that the general counsel for the agency assume the role of parliamentarian at commission meetings.
Would you accept a friendly amendment?
Oh, I would certainly.
I would propose amending that to say that the executive director should appoint a staff member to be a parliamentarian. I think
Perfect.
we should never be saying which staff member does what.
I did so only because the executive director offered them up, but if that's the motion, that's very friendly. That's
So what is the motion?
Move that the executive director designate a member of the staff to serve as the parliamentarian for commission meetings, and we have to include committee meetings in that, well,
The service parliamentarian for the commission.
okay, for the commission.
There's a. Okay, Commissioner Edwards. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we will have a voluntary as recommended by the.
I will appoint our general counsel, Keith St. John, to serve in that role. However, in his absence, I would designate our deputy general counsel.
Sweet banana.
All righty, so can we find a date for our special meeting in September? We said we would at the last meeting. And I'm going to ask that we look at the week of 11. And,
Teach on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays.
okay, so can we look at Wednesday from 10 to noon?
13th.
The 13th.
The Supreme Court Judges Association is having its annual meeting, and it ends on the 13th.
Yeah, and what does that have to do with us? I'm just kidding.
Well, somebody may be there.
Yeah.
I just want to know, I will not be at the September proper meeting
Right.
because I'm leaving the country on Friday, the 15th.
All right, so
Is this in Albany or next week?
we could do it both places.
Wait, where's that arrangement?
So you can't do Tuesdays,
7.
Tuesdays or Thursdays?
Tuesdays or Thursdays.
On Mondays, I don't teach until 4, so.
You can't do Mondays.
Okay, what do you continue?
So Wednesday looks like it's Wednesday. Len, we may have to do it, we can't do it without you. So you can't do it at all on the 13th?
I'll be there at the meeting in the morning and in transit after that from Saratoga.
So could you do it by, could we have you join by phone from your car? Or your, whichever mode of transportation you're using?
I suppose I could.
Okay, so, at what time, does that meeting end?
I'll probably be on the road by 1.
On the road by 1,
What are we talking about, the 13th now?
the 13th.
13, 10 o'clock.
So could we do 1 to 4 on the 13th?
What?
For lunch? Yes.
What the teachers?
Wednesdays are free.
Okay.
Okay, so 1 to 4, and the purpose of this meeting is to review the action plans of the committees as it relates to the priorities that were designated to the committees coming out of the staff provided, coming out of the public hearing. Is that clear?
No.
So we had a document from staff that allocated to committees, designated for committees, the priority items for committees that came out of the public hearing. We also had secondary, tertiary designations. We said that we would only focus on the primary items per committee. and that we would come up with an action plan for those primary items. That's what we included in the minutes. We go back and look. And then we would come up with, we would have a special meeting in September where committees would look at those priority items. Committees would have looked at those priority items by September and have an action plan that they would then share.
For the list of questions. For the list of questions.
For the list of, issues that were raised at the meeting. So we have, everybody's looking very confused. Let me just try one more time. I think, Michael, did you provide that document, or Keith provided the document? That said, here's what we heard at the public hearing. Here is how those things are allocated to committee. And then we said, we've asked the committees to come up with an action plan, how those issues would be addressed, and then present that action plan at a special meeting in September.
A quick question. You say, where the chart says primary committee and secondary committee, whatever it says, talking about both those committees or just the primary?
Just the primary committee. And then what we said was, if there's need for consultation, the chairs would consult to work out what might be any discrepancy.
Correct. So I would suggest then, just to amend what you said, is that because the communications committee has no primary responsibilities at all, but that the chair of the relevant committee, where there's a secondary committee listed, should consult with the chair of that committee so that.
Prior to the meeting.
Sure. Prior to the meeting.
Sure.
And I anticipate that.
I think that's the.
Yeah, that, for example, just to maybe concrete, Claudia and I discussed that I drafted something and she correctly corrected my draft. So now I think Claudia could make a report, comfortably say the two relevant committees are recommending this.
So the list of things in the spreadsheet is not everything on the committee's agenda. It's those are comments, many of which are things like proposed legislative amendments, which we may or may not agree with. And so is the action plan that we're going to develop? Two questions. One, are we developing action plans before this September meeting and discussing them there, or are we developing them at the meeting?
They're drafts. So you would develop drafts that we discuss at the meeting.
Okay, and then the other question is, are those drafts going to include all the other stuff the committees have on their agendas so that it fits in and is manageable, or is that
not what we said we would do in the motion that we made at the last meeting? But if that's what committees want to do, to provide information about the other items on their agenda, then why not?
We never, as a commission, approved our charters.
Right.
No, and that's what I thought this next meeting was about, to approve that.
That's not what we said. We said we would, because we felt like the question kept being raised, when are we going to get back to the public about the issues that were raised in the public meeting? We said we would have a special meeting where we would hear, first we asked that there be a distillation of those issues, right? And then that they be allocated to committees, which does. And then we said, well, we need a plan of attack. Special meeting, and then we look at those action plans and how it's part of that.
Well, just with respect to communications and ethics, actually, Commissioner Cardozo and I did have a discussion about whether we thought it was appropriate for ethics to be the primary. I think it was one issue that we actually agreed that communications should have the lead on it.
And that's fine. And then so let's.
To that church, maybe helpful, based upon the conversations I had with each of the chairs, and then circulated a draft of what would, assuming they agreed, would be saying in effect is at least an abbreviated version of the action plan. And I circulated it, Claudia marked it up, and Seymour gave me comments. So I think that would help expedite the September meeting.
And we should do that wherever we need to do it, but I think each committee chair should look at the things that have been assigned their committee. And then to that, you may come to the meeting and say, we don't think we should do any of these until the year 2050. And that's the.
But I think that's exactly what we said. And others are requiring legislation. And you have to consult perhaps with the legal committee. And then assuming it does require legislation, do we want to support, do we think it's a good idea?
Exactly. This is a full discussion we want to have because we said we did not have time to do it in a regular meeting. So let's have that. Let's have those 3 hours. Commissioner Grove.
Just a question. So these documents that are circulating are only going to committee chairs?
No, they're going to everybody, but committee chairs can consult.
Oh, because
Well, again, where I plead guilty, I drafted, based upon the conversations I had with each of the chairs, the relevant committees that were related to me.
I see.
So that I sent it to Seymour wearing his hat as head of the ethics committee. And
right. So I think the step that has to be after that, right, is that once there's an agreement about an approach, then you circulate it to everybody. Right. But the chair should consult where there's overlap.
And when you say circulate, you want the chairs to do the circulation.
Or if you don't, if that becomes a burden, up to the executive director and see if he can provide some assistance. Yes.
So just to make sure I understand, because I do think that, I mean, number one, I think it's a very good idea to have a meeting to talk about how we're going to get all of these issues resolved. I think it's great that folks have been working on priorities. So this all seems very wise to me. I do think that it's important to have also the charters for the committees, so we have a sense that these, which I think can be shorter than what the education committee did. I really do think a committee charter can just say generally, here's what the committee is working on, but I think that to have a fair sense of whether you're going to be able to resolve 5 issues for the public meeting in the next 6 months, you need to know what else you're planning to do those 6 months. Otherwise, you've just prioritized the public meeting issues, which may not be the most pressing issues. Some of them are, some of them probably aren't. I do think that that's, and I don't think that we actually need to modify anything we adopted, at least according to the minutes. The minutes from the last session say a motion was made by Commissioner Cardozo, seconded by Caraballo, that there be a meeting no later than early September, at which each committee shall present what has been identified as the substantive priorities that it wants to focus on, with a proposal on specific actions that should be taken to implement those priorities. Motion carried unanimously. So I think that we, very consistently with that, we can use the September meeting to review action plans that include.
I just get away from the word charter. I think that's too formal. Charge. Well,
what we agreed on was that the committee should.
The language is good. It says priorities. Right. We actually talked about it in the context of the document that Keith presented to us. That's not necessarily reflected in the minutes, but it's priorities and actions with the bias being, or the preference being toward at least addressing, and we may set them aside, decide they're not priorities, the things that the public shared with us at that public hearing. That was our commitment. That was a conversation. When are we going to deal with what we heard at the public hearing? That was a conversation we had over and over again. This was a step we took toward it. I think we can address how we're going to look at those, what the action's going to be, and how it fits with any other priorities that the committee believes it should be addressing with between now and, right? I just hesitate to say that we should ask every committee that then also have a charter that they would be ready to present. It just sounds a little more formal, and it's one more thing to try to have done between now and September 13th.
My only concern about that is the issue of the charter has been set months ago.
I know, but I'm not sure we're going to resolve it in a month.
And we heard a number of people saying they couldn't be involved in August because of their personal vacation plans. And so as a practical matter, this is not going to get done if you mandated a charter. So I think.
I think if we could narrow the focus, not overburden this thing on the 13th, to say that we said we would look at these priorities coming out of the public hearing. Let's look at them. Let's say what we're going to do. If they bump up against some other things that the committee believes is important, let's talk about what those are. But let's just have a fairly limited task and then see where we go.
Yeah, just to say, I may have misspoke or misled by using the word charter. My personal view is that committees don't actually need any kind of formal charter. What they need is a to-do list that's been ratified by the body. So charge may be a better, right? And a charge can be a sentence, in my view. It can be, here's what the committee does. As long as that sentence is somewhere, we can all find it and look back and say, this committee hasn't gone rogue and is only doing what it's supposed to. So I think I'm perfectly content with the plan. I do think that the charter that the education committee drafted is fantastic and extremely useful and will be very helpful going forward. But
I do think the committee should ultimately have a charter probably similar to that. I just don't think that can happen between now and September.
Okay, we put a proposal on the table that this format be approved, that the format for the charter be approved. Because of that, we're looking at apples.
Oh, so we're mixing it. So we're putting a bunch of stuff in this stew right now. So let's just see if we can back out a little bit. But can we agree to an agenda for the 13th? And is the agenda for the 13th to look at the document Keith gave us, and then for committees to come up with an approach to each of the priority items for their committee?
I think we voted a minute ago that the action plan for the comprehensive review is also on the agenda for that meeting. Is that what we said?
I think you said we wouldn't be.
Yeah, I think we
You
voted.
said you guys would, that you were going to come. I think the motion was, that we didn't agree that, was that you would get it started, you would work with Dolly and Kaylin, and then you make a recommendation.
Yeah, I think that we were going to present something in September as well. So that's my recollection.
You're right. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I think my notes, and Martha can correct me, but that commissioners will outline a plan of action on how to address the issues presented by the outline provided by Michael Sand. We'll work with Commissioners Whittingham, Groenewegen, and Caraballo. We'll distribute for review for all to discuss at the September special meeting.
So that's which I'm happy to change it to. I just want,
No, that's fine.
Okay.
For practical matter, we're saying that that's got to be done in the next 2 weeks. That's not going to happen.
Well, like a representative here, so the.
If each committee is going to have its document created for the September meeting, when we've heard that 2 or 3 people said they're not going to be able to participate in commission business in August, which means that we have between now and July 31 for the various, for those committees at least, to come up with a proposed charter. And I don't believe.
We're not going to do charter. Charter's off the table.
Okay, yeah, good.
It's just a question from the public hearing and the delegation.
And the review of
Correct.
All right, so.
the review.
So we have the 13th from 1 to 4. And we're going to ask the committees to have a plan of action for the priority items coming out of the public hearing as outlined in the memo we got from our general counsel. And we're going to get a report from the Kalen, Dolly, Ava group, ad hoc group, on a plan of action for the document that Michael just described. Michael. Sorry.
That might be part of that group.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Cronin.
It was an intentional, Commissioner Cronin, wasn't it? No. It's ad hoc group.
Okay, great. Can I just add one thing to that? That doesn't mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't mean the committees have to have meetings to discuss their plans of action.
The committees can choose.
Right, it's up to them,
The
but
committees can choose to fulfill their assignment however they choose
but
to.
in the first instance, the chair of the committee should be shared with their committee members how they think they're going to meet.
Yeah, yes.
I'm just very selfishly wondering if I have to do anything first. That's all. I just want to make sure that.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
I don't want to comprehensive review account.
Okay. All right. And can we reflect that on the minutes too, so that we're real clear what we're doing on the 13th? Two major things. All right.
I would ask we make this as a motion since we're chairing committees.
Okay. So the motion is that on September 13th, from 1 to 4, we will have a special meeting. And at that special meeting, two major things will happen. First being that committees will report on a plan of action for those priority issues coming out of the public hearing as assigned and delineated in the memo provided to us by our general. That's number one for the agenda. Number two is we'll get a report from the ad hoc group on a plan of action for addressing the document that Michael Sand has provided us on. That's the motion. Will someone make it?
Fred, I didn't hear the last portion of what you said.
That,
From the ad hoc group, and then you kind of lost.
from the ad hoc group,
We're addressing.
I have some grant, I would ever be addressing the documents and provided.
Comprehensive review.
for the comprehensive review. Yes. You hear that, Commissioner?
I'm sorry, I did not.
Yeah.
People were talking.
So we will, this special group, this ad hoc group, will come up with a plan of action for how to address a review of the advisory opinions as provided by Michael Sand.
Advisory opinions. Okay, got it. Thank you.
So that's the motion. It's been made by Commissioner Carvalho. It's been seconded by Commissioner Ayers. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no. Okay, so we have an agenda for September 13th, 1 to 4. Two major items. Not a must. All right.
Yes.
Are we ready to adjourn to executive session and take a break? Yes, I must. So the chair will entertain a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 105 and Executive Law 94, subsection 11, to address matters concerning employment of personnel, pending litigation, and investigative and enforcement matter that is confidential pursuant to Section 94 of the Executive Law. Is there such a motion? Commissioner, seconded by Commissioner Carvalho. All those in favor of adjourning to executive session, please say aye. Opposed, no.
Wait a moment.
Here's the.
William, let us know.
We are reconvening for the public session of the July 19, 2023 meeting of the Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government in New York State. We have one outstanding matter that we want to take action on, and then we want to have a readout. Should we do the readout first from the executive session?
In executive session, the commission discussed matters related to litigation and legal advice. The commission approved informal guidance pursuant to executive law, section 94(7) and part 931. The commission received a confidential report. The commission authorized steps in several investigative matters, closed 13 matters, and discussed several other investigative matters. The commission also discussed matters related to certain of its information technology needs.
Thank you. We have a resolution that we need to consider and vote on from Commissioner Ayers.
I believe I think I made a motion before. If I didn't, I'd make it now that we adopt the text of the proposed draft resolution on committee procedures.
Can you read the four things on that resolution?
When commission members are appointed to committees, those committees shall have the power to make recommendations on any question or issue on which the full commission votes to charge the committee with making recommendations. If the committee believes it appropriate to address additional questions or issues, the committee must seek approval from the full commission to expand its charge before proceeding to develop recommendations. The committee's power shall be limited to recommendations or proposals unless the full commission gives the committee power to take additional action. In other words, item 1 says only recommendations and only when the commission as a whole is charged the committee with it. Number 2, after staff schedule a time for a committee to meet, accommodating the schedule of committee members to the greatest extent possible, staff shall advise the full commission of the time and date of the meeting and the issues to be discussed at that meeting. Number 3, any member of the commission who is not a member of a committee may attend, not must, but may attend a meeting of that committee, although they will not vote on recommendations the committee may choose to make. Paragraph 4, when materials relevant to committee meetings are circulated to the members of a committee, those materials shall also be circulated to all members of the commission.
Second to that, second by Commissioner Whittingham. Is there any more discussion, Commissioner James?
I have some reservation about the first clause. My concern is that topic may fall under a committee's jurisdiction. And in order for them to act upon it, they will have to come back to the commission to seek permission. And I think that's going to delay any efforts we have to accomplish something. I really think if we have, jurisdiction on a particular in a matter, that the committee ought to be, I think we should trust our committees to actually address those issues as they believe, as they see fit. And obviously you have to come back to the commission to approve any recommendation. But I would hate to see it delayed in discussing and making a recommendation about a particular issue because we haven't gotten permission.
Sure.
So that was why I used the phrase question or issue rather than matter. Because I think to me, issue is something broad like delegation or communications. It's not a specific matter, but I'm open to other, obviously.
I don't see what we gain by the additional sentence. I mean, I agree with Seymour. If the committee decides it wants to look into issue B, not just issue A, you can look into it. Can't take any action in any event. And the next commission meeting, in any event, you can say we're going to look into it. It seems to be redundant as a practical matter.
The reason for having it in was the fear that two committees would both notice the same pending issue and independently start developing recommendations without folks knowing that they were doing that.
But if our practice is that each committee is giving a report at the next meeting, the likelihood of that happening is quite slim.
Also, or if they're circulating reports or results of their meetings, everybody will be on notice of it at an early point.
Or the agendas. So,
Or their agendas, that's correct.
Yeah, so we have to start doing it because we're not doing that right now. So I guess if that's a friendly amendment, but what we're talking about, that everybody will see it, it has not been happening. So if we're going to remove that, then we need to really stick to it.
What's the line that speaks?
The second sentence.
So the proposal is to remove the sentence that says, if the committee believes it appropriate to address additional questions or issues, the committee must seek approval from the full commission to expand its charge before proceeding to develop recommendations. The first sentence already says, the committee shall have the power to make recommendations on any question or issue on which the full commission votes to charge.
I think you're more referencing the charge, which you read this morning. Was a question of, are we saying charter or are we saying charge? So you're talking about the overall thing versus a singular issue when you talk about the charge.
How about this? In the interests of getting everybody to their train, I would accept as a friendly amendment, or I'm making it myself, deleting that sentence, which leads to the concern, and adding another sentence that says, in full, committees shall circulate an agenda before their meetings to the full commission, so that we are all advised of what the committees are going to be.
That sounds reasonable.
I think you may need to delete the first two sentences. Because the first sentence actually says that they can't do anything. They're supposed to only do what's given.
Great, so then I would, in the interest of, since we're over time, I think I'm going to move to table my own motion until the next meeting, because I think we can't continue to include all.
We should comment it because you said.
Is there a second?
Just two questions that you should consider or may consider, Ava. Number one is, do you want to use the word attend or participate? As to whether or not, so that's one issue. And the other issue is perhaps you just want to clear anything new and different with the chair to be sure that there's coordination from the top.
We have a motion on the floor to table. We can take this offline as well. It's been made and seconded. All right, so since we can't debate it, all in favor of tabling until when?
The next full commission.
The next full commission.
As opposed to the September, December.
You want to do this?
Shall we do it in the September and then?
I would rather do it at our August meeting if we had.
We don't have an August meeting.
Special meeting.
Yes, it's a special meeting.
So the motion is to table this for discussion until the September 13th special meeting. And that's the second from Commissioner Whittingham. All those in favor of tabling, please say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The motion is tabled. I just want to, I want to make one comment for the record, for the public. And that is, I said in my remarks at the end of the last commission meeting that we really are depending on the executive branch and the assembly to provide this commission the resources that it needs to fulfill the mandate that's been set for it in ECRA and by the executive branch and the legislature. One huge issue that we are facing has to do with technology and the ability to fulfill our mandate as it relates to technology. We are coming up scarily short in terms of capacity in a number of areas. So I'm going to ask that everyone who has any influence here that can support this commission in getting what it needs in terms of technology, step up to the plate and do that. It borders on malfeasance for us not to do otherwise in terms of carrying out what the public has asked us to do. We should not have meetings that cut in and out because of technological issues where the public is cut off from hearing us and we have to wait. Our lobbying compliance should not be undermined by the absence of sufficient technological support. as it could be if we weren't, if we don't have the technology that we really need. And other areas of our operation should not suffer because we are limping along when it comes to meeting our technology needs, which this commission could have alternatives to, provided it has sufficient resources. It would be better if we got the capacity from the offices charged with providing that. So I'm making a public plea to all parties with responsibility here to work closely with this agency to ensure that it has the maximum technological capacity that it needs to carry out its mandate. Thank you. Any more questions, comments? Motion to adjourn? Commissioner Gronway, seconded by Commissioner Carvalho. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thanks to the staff for all their hard work. Thanks to the public for attending. Thanks to the commissioner. Thank you.